Welcome to Checkpoint Charlie. Checkpoint Charlie. Why is it called Checkpoint Charlie? Is it something to do with checkpoint cocaine? Is it something to do with checkpoint someone called Charlie? No, in fact, it's nothing to do with either of those things. There's no person called Charlie, okay? It comes from Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, the US military alphabet, phonetic alphabet, because Checkpoint Charlie was the third in a series of crossing points over the Berlin Wall, okay? And it was generally, but not exclusively, used by diplomatic and military personnel, okay? And it stood right here. Now, why exactly did Checkpoint Charlie become so famous? Well, for two basic reasons. Escape stories and spy stories. The spy stories are particularly interesting. The CIA actually started an observation post on the top floor of the Cafe Adler there. Okay, Cafe Adler, sorry. They started their observation post right up there. And they brought with them all their cool little listening devices and their binoculars. And they sat there and they kept an eye on the Russians at all times. Of course, the Russians, the Stasi, and the KGB were not going to be outdone by their arch enemies, the CIA. So they set themselves up in the top floor of that building over there, and they started watching right back at the CIA. So you've got an absurd situation in Checkpoint Charlie, where you have two great, huge spy organizations with their 50s spying equipment watching each other about 20 meters across the road. There were also some amazing escape stories that happened through Checkpoint Charlie. One of my favorites, well, I'm always a fan, I've got to say, the really sort of elaborate escapes I think are kind of cool, but I quite like the simple ones, the really just basic ones where someone saw an idea and just went, wow. One guy, in the early days of the wall, okay, he was living in the east, he wanted to escape to the west. So what he did was, he got a sports car, right, and he cut off the top of it, and he just drove full pelt at the barrier at Checkpoint Charlie, okay? Now the guards saw him coming and they went like that, try and get him to slow down. And they realized this guy really wasn't going to slow down. This guy wasn't even looking like he was going below 70. So these guards were just waiting a couple of seconds and then ran out of the way. And this car just went zoom, and he cleared the barrier by about 1.5 inches. He went straight underneath. Okay, he was down like that, okay? And he just zoomed straight into the west, okay? Perfect, genius escape. Right? There was a group of people that built several tunnels. They were further in the east, okay? A group of Western students actually dug right under the river into the east. That was a pretty cool little escape plan. Across Checkpoint Charlie, there was a guy who used to smuggle people, in the fuel tank of his car. He put a little bit of fuel in his tank. It was an extra big tank, and he'd crunch one person up and put them inside it. In fact, there was a guy that there was a guy that actually smuggled his granny across from the east to the west. How did he manage that? Well, he decided one day he wanted his granny to come and live with him in the west. So what he did was, he drove across into the east. You could get day passes if you were a westerner. Drove into the east, picked up his granny, sewed her into the back seat of his car, and then drove her across Checkpoint Charlie. The only problem was that she'd suffocated by the time they got into the west. Quite sad, really. No, I'm only joking, she lived. Let's go down here and get some lunch, shall we? Follow me in this direction.